Hey, friends, and welcome to the KidsMin Collective podcast. I'm your host, Lauren Ralston, and today's episode is called Raising Student Leaders: Why Big Kids Belong in KidsMin. So, we're going to explore how to use student leaders effectively in kids ministry, and why they are essential to both the mentorship and the discipleship of younger kids, but also to the future of the church. So, to start, I want to ask you a question for you to take some time to think about this. If you need to pause it and you need to consider the answer to this question, take the time to do that. But also, you might just know the answer off the top of your head. So, who was somebody that you looked up to when you were growing up? I know I can think of multiple people throughout my childhood who I thought, ooh, when I was in first grade, oh, there's this fourth grader, and I think that she's so cool. Or a girl at church. I remember there was a youth, she was in the youth group, and I was in elementary school, and she could sing and play the guitar. So she would sing in front of the church. And I told my mom as a child, as probably a 7-year-old, Mom, when I grow up, I want to be like her. So there are those people. Who are those key people in your life that you looked up to when you were growing up? We all had them. Likely there, even as adults, we have people that we think, oh, they are farther ahead in life than me, in a different stage, in a different season, but I would love to be like them when I grow up, right? And so when we consider this, it's helpful to think of this through the lens of KidsMin and student leaders in kids ministry. And so I know that there is sometimes it's a little bit hard to step into bringing student leaders into your ministry. There's different rules that they have to abide by, things that they can and can't do because they're students. I know that there's sometimes the challenging piece of they're young. They don't always know what it looks like to volunteer or to serve in this capacity. And now it's an extra thing on your plate that you have to do, or that you have to train teachers to handle, or, there are those hard things. And I get that. But at the end of the day, I think this is a prime opportunity for discipleship and to love our student leaders well and to bring them in to the vision of the church as a whole. So we need to look at this from the perspective of a child in your ministry. So if you have early childhood kids, they're probably looking up to somebody in elementary age group. If you have an elementary student, they're probably looking up to somebody in the youth group or in a young adult stage. And so kids see those figures in their life as big kids, and they want to emulate them. They want to do the things that they're doing. They think they're really cool. And so because of that, oftentimes when you start incorporating those kids and those student leaders into your classrooms, those big kids, the kids of your ministry are going to engage and respond with those kids better than adults. I used to tell my teachers all the time, hey, if you have a student leader in your classroom, get them excited about doing what you're asking the kids in your class to do, because the kids in your class are going to do what the student leaders do. If the student leader says, hey, let's clean up our toys, the kid is going to be pumped about cleaning up those toys, versus if you as an adult teacher ask them to clean up their toys, they're not going to respond the same way. So how do we utilize that to the advantage of the class as a whole, but also to provide discipleship opportunities all along the way in that, right? And so if kids in our classes are going to respond to big kids and engage more with them, let's work with all of these age groups to make this possible, to bring big kids into our KidsMin classrooms. So some of the ways that I saw this practically play out would be student leaders again, just kind of a preface to that, I guess. I sort of touched on this, but you're going to need some guidelines around what age kids can serve in what age group younger children. For example, it's probably not appropriate for you to have a sixth grader serving in a fifth grade classroom. They're too close in age. They probably all go to school together. The sixth grader shouldn't really have any authority over the fifth grader. They're likely all in the same ministry. They're probably friends with each other outside of church. Like there's a lot of layers to that is not a super healthy dynamic. But a sixth grader could be a student leader in an early childhood classroom, and a 10th grader could be a student leader in a sixth grade classroom. And so how do you make those lines of what age groups are appropriate to serve in what age groups? So that's going to be unique and specific to your church. I am happy to talk through that and brainstorm through that with you, and would love to create a plan that makes sense for you. So starting with that foundation, right? So when we do that, what are the practical ways that student leaders, these big kids, can come in and serve in our kids' ministries? So one of the things I told teachers all the time, give the student leader ownership of something specific. When they come into the classroom at the beginning, say, we're going to play, we're going to read our Bible story and do our song time, and then we're going to do our craft. You are in charge of doing the craft. You can set it up. You can get it ready while we're doing our Bible story. I want you to tell the kids how to do this. I want you to walk them through it. I want you to help. I, as a teacher, will be there to support you and help you, but you as a student leader are owning the craft. Obviously, as lead teachers get to know students, you can pick and choose the things that you ask them to do based on that student's skill set. But some of the things we saw were overseeing crafts, playing the silly games, leading worship, whether they were leading that in a small group capacity within an early childhood classroom, or student leaders were up in front on a stage helping lead the elementary students through worship. Those are all potential options. All of those are going to require varying levels of ability to pour into and to develop that leader, but those are all potential options. The kids of those ministries are going to gravitate towards seeing what that student is doing, and they're going to, again, want to emulate that. So it's not only this idea that it's really cute to see a kid up in the front leading worship, but that it's actually discipleship. This is discipleship, again, from the top down. You as a KidsMin director or leader, you're pouring into lead teachers who are then pouring into student leaders in their classroom, who are pouring into and discipling children in the classroom, but also you're teaching teachers how to disciple student leaders. You are discipling student leaders. You're practicing the living in community, living in accountability, holding them accountable for their actions, all of those things, training and equipping them to disciple other kids. And so why do we wait to do this till they're adults? Why are we not starting this when they are students? And so another thing that you can just consider is when parents are serving in a classroom as a teacher and their student is serving alongside them, that gives you another opportunity for parents to be disciple makers in that setting. So there's lots of ways that you can do this, but it is all coming back to discipleship. So students actually become better leaders through serving. They need to have an opportunity to learn what it means to own a position and to own a role and to lead out in that. They often don't have ownership of things. So if you give them ownership and you equip them to do that, they are going to love it and they're going to jump into it. So I encourage you to find those places where you can bring students in. We are also not simply teaching kids in our ministry. We talk about this all the time, right? Like it is discipleship, but also by providing these student leaders the opportunity to serve, you are also raising up the future ministry leaders. So if a kid never had an opportunity to serve from the time they were born until they graduated from high school, they never served anywhere, they're going to go out into the world and they're going to say, oh, what is volunteering? Oh, what does it look like to serve? What does it look like to be a leader? Do I need to get involved in my church? Can I just serve someplace else? Do I have to show up every time? They're going to ask a lot of questions about that. Versus if we provide them opportunities from the beginning at a young age, how do we teach them what it looks like to be a disciple maker and to serve and to lead in church capacities in kids ministry? So this is practically helping them develop their leadership skills. It's teaching them how to be present in a specific ministry, helping them learn to take responsibility, praying through, their ministry, what they're involved in, praying for the kids in their ministry, praying over how they lead. And it teaches them flexibility. Sometimes we don't always get to do the things we want, and kids don't always act the way we want, but it's teaching them how to learn to be flexible in those. It's teaching them to bring truth and scripture, and ultimately teaching them to be disciple makers. So, what is better than teaching a 13-year-old how to be a disciple maker at the age of 13 rather than waiting till we say, you're an adult, you should be a disciple maker? So, a couple of things that you can do to just train and vision cast this would be to prepare some student leader trainings. These are likely going to need to be short trainings, probably more mentorship or shadowing, thinking along those lines. I know when I would do student leader meetings, I would often pull students, I would get the whole service started, and then during the service, I would pull all the kids, the student leaders, out of their classroom and do a short 15-minute training with them. And I would say, is there any questions? Crickets, nothing. That is hard for them. And so keep your training short, keep them applicable to them, and just keep them applicable to what they need to learn. Don't always go with, I know students have a long list of like, you can't change diapers, you can't pick up a kid, you can't, do this thing, you can't take a kid to the bathroom. Like there's a lot of things they can't do, but they need to know those things, but also communicate, this is why you're serving. This is the bigger picture. This is what it looks like to be a leader, and you're being a leader. How do you develop that skill set? Also vision casting that role and that discipleship space to your adult leaders. So helping them to understand that student leaders are not just assistants, but they're also being discipled. Not only are the adult teachers and leaders helping to disciple student leaders and the children in their classrooms, but they are also giving these student leaders the ability to be disciple makers. And that is, at the end of the day, the biggest vision and the role that we are to play in the church as a whole. That's what Christ calls us to. That's what the Great Commission is, to go and make disciples. And so this is a layer of that. And so support them in that, hear them out. I'm not telling you that every student leader is perfect and is going to fit this discipleship mold exactly how they should. And often student leaders don't know how to be leaders, so they're going to need to be trained in that. And that is part of the vision casting you do with the adult leaders. So just keep that in mind, that we have to remember too that these student leaders are young leaders. They don't know what it looks like to serve. They don't know what it looks like to be in a leadership role. And so we are training them and modeling that for them. So part of that is giving them the ownership of something, a specific task, a specific part of the service, a specific thing that they can do. And just another thing that can be super practical for this is if you have children that are particularly challenging in your class, meaning a child in your children's ministry, not a student leader, these big kids can play a huge impactful role in that by modeling the things that the teachers are asking them to do. So I used to tell my students all the time, if the teacher in the classroom says, okay, it's time to clean up the toys, you need to be so excited about cleaning up toys because all of the kids in the classroom are looking at you and saying, oh, that big kid is excited about cleaning up toys. I can do that too. And they will clean up and they will follow how you lead. And so the same thing goes with the challenging kids. If you have a kid who tends to have behavioral issues, or maybe a child that has some special needs, often they are drawn to these students. And if those students are modeling what should be done, and or the student can pay special attention to that child in the class to help mitigate some of the challenging things that come up, that is a huge win for the teachers in the class. It's a huge win to give leadership responsibility to the student leader, and ultimately is serving the best interest of the child who's struggling in those spaces. And so consider how you might use them. Be creative with ways that you can involve them and get them invested in the ministry and what that can look like for you. So I want you to, as you're considering what this looks like, a challenge would be to pick 1 or 2 students that you could start with. Even if it's small, even if it's giving them one task or thing that they can help oversee, use this as a trial run. Figure out what's working, what doesn't work, but then take some time to evaluate and then scale it, right? So if you're realizing, oh, this is really working well, I want to keep doing this, I can get a bunch more students to do this thing, but this part of it doesn't work. Take time to consider that. Figure out what works, what doesn't, what would be helpful if you can give students different student roles, just like we've talked about before. You have a teacher in a space, you have a check-in person, you have a greeter, you might have somebody who prepares snacks. Those are different roles. So can a student have different roles depending on their skills, depending on their passions, depending on their ability level? And again, evaluate that and then scale that. How do you make that how do you scale that to be a bigger process and to have more student leaders? So for you, if you are interested in this, if you don't know where to start, if you've started this, but you need some thoughts, advice, help, you want to brainstorm, you want to word process it, I am happy to do that with you. So I would love to help you figure out a plan for starting with the students that might make sense in your ministry, and or figuring out how do you revamp what you're doing with student leaders and these kids in your ministry. How do we equip the big kids of your ministry? And so let's get on a call. You can book a call on my homepage. I will put the link in the description here of this podcast. But let's create a plan for how to engage student leaders in your ministry and to cast this vision about why big kids belong in KidsMin. I hope you have a great week, and I will see you next week. Talk to you later. Thanks for joining me today on the KidsMin Collective podcast, where we're all about nurturing leaders and impacting generations. Before you go, I want to invite you to take the next step in growing your ministry with confidence. I've created a free KidsMin Leader Assessment designed just for leaders like you. It walks you through the 5 key areas: purpose, people, programming, physical space, and procedures, helping you celebrate what's going well and uncover where there's room to grow. Whether you're a brand new leader or you've been leading for years, this tool will give you a clear picture of where your ministry stands and where it could go with a little strategy and support. Head over to ozarkministryconsulting.com to get started. You'll find the assessment right on the homepage, quick, simple, and packed with insight. And if this episode encouraged you, share it with a fellow leader or leave a review. We're better when we grow together. Until next time, keep leading well, keep loving big, and remember, your ministry matters.